All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Rudy Vanderwalt. I'm a Business Development Manager here at K2, and thanks for joining us on this lovely Tuesday afternoon to spend some time drilling into build and run eForms powered by your imagination. So in terms of those of you that don't know the company's been around for a number of years. Company has a global footprint. On the slide, you'll see we reference about 80 countries. It's probably edging to 90 plus so far, and 1 million users in counting on a daily basis, adding more and more users. The important thing I want to do today is jump into why we're on this webinar. I think a number of you have come across this challenge of electronic forms. Companies approaching saying, okay, you know what, InfoPath has got its challenges. We're not necessarily clear on where the roadmap is going, and we're all looking for answers. But when you analyze your challenge, you realize that electronic forms is, I almost want to say, the user interface. It is a lot more behind that form that actually is a challenge. There's a number of things, for example, integration. There is sometimes an automation where I fill in a form, I want to send it to somebody for approval, maybe want to update some kind of application on the back end, or before I can actually complete this form, I need to populate it with specific user information so that the user completing the form has actually the right information, is empowered with drop-downs and his own account information, and then possibly submit his form for some kind of execution or processing in the back end. So what we're looking for when you look at forms, every form in its own right is almost its own application. So in your organization, we're faced with this scenario. You've got a number of these forms, also called applications, that you need to build. The major challenge that you're facing is the organization approach you and they say, well, you know what, my form is pretty simple. And we come across this fairly frequently where people say, I want to do a simple leave form. I only got 3 steps. And you start drilling into the leave form and you're saying, well, you probably can't send a leave application if your manager don't know what your accumulated number of leave days are, because he's then not empowered to approve a decline. And we very soon realized that there is this concept of automation behind that form, and there's some integration that needs to happen, and the process in the form gets a little bit more in-depth and a little bit more detailed. And then we realized that your back-end HR system is an SAP ERP application system, which means you have now gone from a simple 3-step process to an ERP back-end integration project. It is not simple anymore. Then we go on and we're saying, well, this is forms. As soon as we realize what we want to do with the forms, you come back and say, but this form doesn't live in isolation. There's some kind of process behind it. And again, the process might be simple, but then we soon realize, but what happens if your manager is not available? You probably want to do something like an escalation. What if the manager is out of the office? How do we know that? You probably want some kind of out-of-office capability. What happens if you send it to a shift manager and you're somewhere on a mine and we need to send it to the manager that's heading up this shift, and this shift is the 12 to 8 o'clock at night shift, and the workflow gets a little bit more complex. Once we've got that right, we realize that, okay, there's data integration. There may be HR, there may be finance. What happens if I ask for unpaid leave? Now I need to do calculations. What happens if I come back a day early and I say, well, I went in for 5 days, but I only came back after 4 days. How do I get my money back? How do you do that integration? It sounds simple, but it could get fairly complex, and similar to reporting. Where is it? Who's involved? Has it escalated? Who did it escalate? Et cetera, et cetera. And again, guys, once you've done this, you realize that this is just design. We're thinking about applications. The next thing you think is, what kind of tool sets are out there that I can do this with? I can open probably Visual Studio and I can start code it. Now I need some skills. Those skills are developers and they're getting paid by the day or by the hour. So keep on designing. How thick is your checkbook? or I can get applications similar to K2, and I can save time, I can be more productive. Then we go on and say, once we have this first version built, how do I get it into a UAT environment? Once it's in UAT and it's tested, how do I get it into production? If I make a change to the system and I want to deploy a V2, how do I go through those cycles again? How easy is it? Is there package and deployment tools, or is it a cumbersome exercise that I potentially have to rebuild some of these building blocks over and over every time I want to move into production? Once I have that done, we realize that, hey, we just got the first solution and application out the door, and now the organization realizes what's possible and they want more. The more applications they want, simultaneously with that, the requirements increase. So now we're going through that intermediate into an advanced step. Things get more complex. It's not a linear line growing, it is an exponential line. More applications, more requirements, and they want it now because they realize what is possible, and you probably delivered this with a tool like A2 fairly rapidly, and that's the expectation. So you need to keep on managing that expectation from the company. And soon thereafter, they're saying, well, what happens if something goes wrong? We don't live in the ideal world. How can you trap an error? How can you tell me that the process is in an error state? Can I actually fix that error, rerun that instance, or can I say reinstantiate that step of that process that I'm in and continue and complete? Or do I need to delete that instance and restart it from scratch? And then the other things come like time zones and people in different countries and regions and so forth. And once you think you've got that covered, they tell you that currently I'm on SharePoint 2010, but I would love to go to SharePoint 2013, or I would like to move to Office 365. How do we bring in the different platforms? And once you've got that covered, they start listing all the other applications you didn't think of that they actually want to integrate into. And on the right-hand side, you only see but a few. What we're going to cover today is in essence what you see in the screen. We're going to show you how K2 can help you to address this concept of electronic forms and get this done very quickly, very efficiently. So if we think about an application, what we just said, what is an application? There's a concept of a workflow. There's the electronic forms, the user interface that we interact with. And then the reporting, where am I, who's involved, what did they do, when did they approve, and where is the information sitting at the moment. And the very important thing is, you'll see that blue is underpinning all three at the top. The data is the very important. Without data, it's just a form. You need to give that form life by empowering it by data. We're not going to spend too much time on the workflow. If you look at K2, we've got very, very deep automation and workflow roots, and we're happy to drill in to that at a later webinar, or if you need more information, you're welcome to post on the question bar on your right-hand side of the GoToMeeting tab on the right, and we're happy to reach out to you and give you more information. Now, the important side, we keep on talking about data, is exactly that. If we look at data, rather than trying to integrate into your line of business systems every time when we do things, we try and break it up in little building blocks. And I use Lego as a good example of what we do. We go and we look at your HR data, your finance data, some CRM data, some account information, client information, and we try and break it down into small, reusable building blocks, things we call in K2 smart objects. Because once I have these building blocks, I can build anything. Go and give Lego blocks to kids and see what they come up with. If you look at the shoe at the top right, if I want to build some thongs, or I want to change it to a hiking boot, I don't break the blocks. I take them apart and I reassemble them. I configure them in a different order to do what the business needs. So if you think about how that works, we look at all the systems on the left, and K2 is at the top, so you can actually get your K2 information as well, your process. You can even have a process as a smart object, and you create them. You then have your building blocks, and on the right-hand side, you can then do with that building blocks what you need. And if you think about what that means in the context of the applications, we all have the processes, we all have forms that need data, and then the reporting. So as I said, in the real world, typically people do this, which makes it pretty interesting because if I want to integrate into SAP and I don't know what a remote function or a BAPI is, you're kind of in trouble. You need intricate knowledge of the applications on the right to actually be able to build something meaningful. And with the concept of K2, we put this layer in the middle. We then allow the business to reference these building blocks. And then on the technical side, the IT team just link them to the actual system. So if I have SharePoint 2010 and I want to move to SharePoint 2013, I literally move the line of that service object, the new SharePoint instance, and I can continue. I can actually have both instances running in the same environment, in the same process, on the same form. So business focus on what business needs to do, and there's a golden handshake between business and IT. And IT is not trying to decipher what business wants, they actually focus on what they need to do. How do we create these smart objects? Literally a quick screenshot. If you look at something like SQL, you go to the table, right-click, generate smart objects, similar to CRM in SharePoint. And then there's also things like Active Directory, where you can do the same thing. This is literally as quickly and easy as create a smart object. Why? Because we have a bunch of out-of-the-box connectors to numerous systems. Keep in mind, we're running in about 90+ countries. What kind of legacy systems are there in the world that people want to connect to? I cannot fit them all on the screen. What I do have is, if you look at the bottom right, the red encircled dynamic endpoint connector. If there's any application that has exposed itself to the web service, I can wrap a smart object around that web service, which means out of the box, I have integration and ability to talk to that system and bring that information into my forms and into my applications. From a forms perspective, I'm going to have Igor drill into this a little bit more, but we have then the concept that I can have these smart objects, I can have specific views or sections using those smart objects, and those views become reusable components. I can drag and drop them on any form, and there you can see a very quick form that is made up out of information coming out of 3 different systems. From a rules and validation point of view, there is numerous rules behind that. Very, very powerful environment. I'm going to have that again, Igor, to show you what we can do there. And for anybody that's interested in the mobile space, everything that you see there is HTML5. So I can actually open it on any device. We support all 4 the major browsers. So off the cuff, you will be able to show and utilize that form on a mobile device. So from a reporting perspective, again, I'm not going to spend too much time on there. Very capable. We can use those smart objects, get you the line of business systems information, and help you to create very informative reports from that, and also some workflow reporting to show you where you are in the running process. Some examples of what people have done. If anybody tried to build a timesheet system, there it's done with smart forms without writing any code. Here's another example for a scheduling scenario. Again, things that change on a rapid basis. And lastly, I'm giving you a view of what we've done for some customers where we bring in some custom controls. In this example, something like a map control. So with that said, I'm going to hand over to Igor, and let's see if he can show us and give us some practical insight into how we can actually use smart forms to build these electronic forms, and maybe try and see if we can give you a mobile experience. Thank you, Igor.
Thanks a lot, Rudy. I'm just going to move myself to project. Just give me a second. Okay. Can you see my screen okay, Rudy?
Yeah, I can see you well.
Okay, excellent. All right, just had a bit of a critical moment there. My machine just rebooted just before you handed over to myself, so I managed to get it up in time for my part of the demo. So I'm a little bit rattled, but here we go. All right, so what I wanted to do before we get started is just from the registrations, I noticed a lot of the audience are technical, from the technical side of the business. So what I want to do is I want to try to steer a little bit on the technical side, so you can see a little bit of some interesting build pieces going on. But what I do want to do is just start off with a bit of a poll and get an idea of the kind of systems that that you guys interact with on a daily basis. So if you wouldn't mind just using the meeting details, I'm just going to launch the poll. And if you wouldn't mind just selecting the sort of items that you got on there, just give me an idea of what sort of systems you guys interact with. Okay, great. So results are coming in. 24%, 31% of you have voted. Fantastic. 45. So I'm glad we've got your attention. It's going up. It'd be great to see if I can get 100% vote rate. So at the moment, we've got almost everyone voted. It's showing up that we've got about a 37% of you interested in CRM, 81% around SharePoint, 33% on Office 365 or interested in Office 365. SAP, very small, just a 5%, and other custom kind of development orientated is around half of you. Right, so that's quite a good mix, and I think it's quite a nice audience from a K2 point of view as well. So what I think I'll do for this audience then is I'm going to keep the SAP stuff to a low. I can talk to you a little bit about it, but K2 can integrate with SAP, of course. But what I'll then do is I'll steer the meeting to touch on a little bit of the SharePoint aspects as well, so you can see a little bit of what we can do inside there. All right, fantastic. So is the poll still on the screen? Let me close that. Okay. All right. Have you got my screen again? There we go. All right. Fantastic. Okay. Excellent. So what we're going to do to start off with is I'm going to go straight into a little bit of the build experience with K2 and just show you what it's like to build out a mobile form, that can be enabled on mobile devices as well. So Rudy's explained a little bit about the components of K2. So we've got these K2 smart objects that we build. Those smart objects can integrate into various backend systems, including SharePoint, Office 365, SAP, SQL databases, CRM systems, numerous systems that the smart objects can connect to. So K2 is very data orientated. So we always talk about the smart object. What we're then able to do is build a view around a smart object, and that's a visual representation of what that looks like. And then we can take the view and we can put it onto multiple different forms, and we can take advantage of that. So what I'm going to do is we can do this all from scratch, and I can go and manually build a smart object in a view and a form, but we can also generate these. So what I'm going to do is actually show you the generation part of it and taking advantage of these different systems. So what we're going to do is build inside of, this is my Office 365 environment inside here. So I've logged in here into Office 365. What we're able to do is expose K2 into Office 365 and into SharePoint. I'm going to demonstrate using Office 365 because anything I can do in Office 365, I can obviously do with SharePoint on-premise or even a mix between the two. The first thing I want to show you is just about how we can expose K2 to the world. So if you look at this, I've logged in here into Office 365, and what I'm exposing is a little list of apps. So this is actually a K2 smart form sitting inside of SharePoint that's got little apps. For example, I've got some travel requests and expense claims sitting inside of here. And if I click through into those, it'll actually open up those forms, and that's sitting inside of Office 365, including my task lists and any processes that I've kicked off, and I can go and track that. If I show you that information outside of Office 365, so this is in a pure kind of K2 smart form environment, there's again those views. So this is a view of my apps, but this time instead of it being in separate tabs, I've just put them all on one page so we can get just a quick view of my applications, my tasks, and my processes. So once again, K2 can be used completely independently, or of course you can go and put these K2 artifacts inside of those different environments. All right, so let's go back into Office 365 over here. I've got a little site here called Finance. I don't know why I put it into Finance, but I've got a little drinks order SharePoint list over here. And what I'd like to do with this SharePoint list is be able to turn it into a K2 smart form and then be able to let people interact with it and provide orders. And I'm going to actually provide that for you guys on the call a little bit later, that you can actually interact with this. If you've got a mobile device, you can go and interact with it. So at the moment, I've got first name, a last name, an email, a mobile, and then a drink type and a choice. So we'll do a little bit of a cascading drop down there, and maybe a little company that I can have inside there. And maybe what I'll do here is actually, let's add another column onto this. I create a little column just for this presentation. Maybe it's I don't know, some feedback. So maybe when you provide a drink order, you can give me some feedback. Let's make that just a plain text, and I'm adding that as another little column onto the SharePoint list. So what we want to do is be able to fill in this information. But now if you think about it, I'm sitting inside of Office 365, but what I'd like to be able to do is my drink type and my choice of drink. So whether it's a beer or a fizzy drink or water, and then a choice whether it's a Heineken or it's a sparkling or still water based upon the type, I'd like that to come in from my on-premise data from a SQL database. So I'd like to be able to interact with that. So let's go into my on-premise environment over here. Let me just scroll down to the bottom here. I've got a SQL database over here. So let's go into that. So inside of, I've got a little custom SQL database over here. Inside here I've got some tables. And what you'll see inside of my database is I've got some drink choices. There we go. So just standard SQL stuff going on here. So a couple of drink choices and of course the drink types. So you know whether it's water, juice, or soft drink. And then you've got your choice of depending on the type that you've chosen. Right, so just nice and basic. But that, if you think about it, is some data that's sitting inside of our organization that I want to be able to consume onto a form. So let's go about taking advantage of this. The first thing we want to do is be able to access this data through a K2 Smart Object. So to be able to do that, unfortunately when I restarted I lost my resolution. What we can do is take advantage of a little tool that K2's got called our little Smart Object Tester. What this does is, this is behind our Smart Objects we've got services, and some of the services that I've got exposed in my environment, you can see there's quite a few inside here. Services to connect to DLL, so if I go and write, I want some custom code and I want to be able to use it on a form or in a K2 process, I can go and write that code and then point the service to my code, and then it'll be able to take advantage of that. Same thing for web services and endpoints and doing functionality inside of Excel. You'll see there's things here inside of Exchange, for example, where I could go and do things like manage tasks in Exchange, do things like get meeting suggestions and times from employees, you know, so we can maybe automatically or show someone a list of meeting options that they could have with somebody else, you know, on a form, for example. If you carry on down here, there's quite a few other different ones sitting inside here. The one that I'm going to use today is my SQL service one. Let me just, Rudy, can you just check if you're on mute? I can hear a little bit of feedback coming through. Right, so the SQL service one over here, so this is where we can point this to SQL artifacts, like you know, obviously a SQL database, and it'll automatically be able to register and understand that SQL database. So I've got one here called Custom SQL DB. If I edit that service, you can see just basic connection details sitting over here, as well as my authentication mode is how do I authenticate against that SQL database. So, you know, using a service account or static credentials or OAuth, you can see there's quite a single sign-on, quite a few options sitting here. What I pretty do is just run through that, update that. It refreshes that instance, and now what it exposes to me is all the stored procedures, tables, and views. Inside here, there's some tables, and you can see there's my drink choices and drink types sitting inside here. So that's just my backend data. Now what I want to do is be able to use these on smart objects, so we can go and do something something more exciting with them. So what I'm going to simply do is just say, go and create a smart object out of my drink choices. I'll give it a more friendly name here. I'll call it drink choices, and I'll just call it event drink choices. And I'll put it into a category called a event, so I can find it nice and easily just now. And I'll publish that. So that's the first one we've done. Let's go to the drink types and publish that as well. Let's call this event drink types. And I'll put that into the A event as well and publish that as well. And now what we have from a K2 point of view is we now have a smart object, or the two smart objects against my types and my choices, and from here I can actually go and see the methods that have been exposed for me, and I can even go and run it, and I can see the details that are exposed inside of that list for me over there. All right, so I've got those choices sitting inside here. Now, what we can do is, unit test this and make sure that this is all working independently, and that's my smart object now created. So that's just a quick example of creating a smart object out of some SQL data. Next thing we're going to do is go and do something similar, but from Office 365 now. So we're back into Office 365 over here. And what I want to do from this environment is something similar. I'd like a smart object out of my Office 365 drinks orders data, but I'd like to be able to use this data and as well as drinks data inside of Office 365. So from within inside here, since I've integrated my Office 365 with K2, I now get a little K2 application button. Just hold on one second. All right. Okay, thank you. So, so what we've got over here is the list of the items. I've got a K2 little application button, and by clicking on that, we now go into the ability to integrate this Office 365 list with K2. So that takes a little while. What it's doing now is it's connecting through the K2 app, so the SharePoint app model, through to my K2 environment, and then it asks me what I want to do with this data, with this Office 365 list. So I'd like to create a new application. It gives me a couple of choices. So you can see this is geared a little bit more friendlier to kind of an Office 365 user rather than the way that we did the SQL one, which is, I guess, a little bit more developer orientated. So the first option is, do we want to create a smart object? So yes, we do. That's the first thing I want to do. But what I'd also like to do is have it automatically create forms against that smart object and put them inside of Office 365 for me. So I'd like that to take place as well. So I'll just click on those two items, and then I'll hit the OK button. And of course, I could build some workflows as well, which we were not going to do in this session. I might start a workflow for you a little bit later just to show you what it's like. And of course, we could also go and build some reports against that data. Maybe we'll do that a little bit later. So that's what's happened now. It is now built. There's my drinks order smart object and also a smart object for its attachments. In SharePoint, lists can have attachments. And it's built some views around the various things that you can do as well as some forms. So if I now go into Office 365 again, let's open that again. So now I say new item over here. What that has done is that is now a K2 smart form that has now been integrated with, so with inside of Office 365, I'm now looking at a K2 smart form. So let's go and make the smart form a little bit more powerful. So what I'm going to do is just open this on another tab, go to my little K2 application again, and let's go and make some modifications to this form. All right, so the first thing is I'm going to go to the view that's for the new drinks order. We're going to check it out. And then we're going to go and edit that and then bring in our drinks order into that. So there it is, first name, last name, email, mobile, drink type, and drink choice. So let's go to this particular one and let's turn this into a little drop-down list box. You can see all the kind of K2 controls that are being exposed to you here that we can start to take advantage of. And of course, you can actually build your own controls as well. So we've got quite a big community, and you can see they've been pretty active, signature controls and a nice little camera control. So you just click on it, and then it just automatically takes you to the camera feature of your phone, and you can take a photo, that sort of stuff coming in there. So the first thing I've done is the drink type. We've turned that into a drop-down. Now I want to tell it where it gets its data from. So you'll notice I go to my data sources here. I can now browse into my smart objects. There's my event. And what we're going to do here is we're going to get our types. All right. So we're going to get our types. And for SharePoint, I'm just going to store the type. So that's the value that gets stored, and that's what is displayed. So the first one over there is our drink type. Now I can go to my drink choice. Let's also make that a little drop-down list box. Go back to the smart object as well, and this time we're going to choose that those are my my choices of drink. I want the choice to be stored, and for display, I don't want it to show the type, I want it to show the choice. And over here, you can actually be creative about what you want it to display in the drop-down list box. So that's the first thing that we're doing over there. But I don't just want all the choices. I want the choices only for the type that you've selected, so that cascading capability. So I want to filter this based upon another control's value. So the parent control is the types, and I want to filter it by the type. And that's it. So now when I choose a type, my choices are going to be presented for me based upon that. And of course, I've got a lot of control inside here. For example, I want maybe the company a little bit higher up. For example, over here, a little feedback over there is okay for now. And I'm quite happy with that, that initial kind of configuration. So let me go and finish that and check that in. All right, so I go back into SharePoint now. And this time when I go to new item, click on that particular one. I can put in my name here, Igor Jurisovic, igor@k2.com. Now, when I come into, let's just fill in that. Now, when I come into my type, you can see those, and my choices, there's none here. So when I choose beer, now I've got some beers, and if I choose maybe a soft drink, I'm busy working at the moment, so maybe I'll just have a lemonade. Add those items inside there, and I hit save. The save button automatically then takes me back to my SharePoint list, and you can see we've got that entry in there, including those items that we pulled in from that backend system. All right, so that's just a very quick way of just showing you how I've taken these two different systems and sort of brought the data together and exposed that information. What I'd probably also like to do is show you a little bit, something a little bit more, maybe get you guys to interact. Let's go and take this now out of Office 365 and do other things with it. Right, so from within inside here, I'm going to go and make some changes. I'm going to go to the form that sits in Office 365, the new drinks order form, and I'm just going to duplicate that. So I'm going to save it as new drink order. I'm going to call this maybe my external new drink orders. And what you'll notice is I'm going to duplicate the form, but I'm not going to duplicate the views. So I'm not clone the views, and I could do that if I needed to. So that's fine. So there's my new drinks order. Let's edit this one now. Now what I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to expose it outside of my organization. First of all, I don't want the attachments, so I'm just going to get rid of that. And what we're going to do over here is we're going to go and modify this slightly. So first of all, I don't want to use the SharePoint theme because I want to expose it outside. So I'm going to use something called the lithium theme, something slightly different. We're going to make this, give it some better width and height. So it's, it's not geared for SharePoint, but maybe geared a little bit more for, different devices. So I also make it not stretch more than 800. A couple little details there. And what I'm also going to do here is bring in a little header. Let's find my little header that I want to use. I've got an anonymous one somewhere over here. That's the one I want, this little header. So a little header that's going to bring in some information for me. Let's make that non-collapsible. Let's make a little drinks order section over here that's also not collapsible. And what I'm also going to do from this form as well is go and make some changes to it. So this is quite new, this advanced new feature that we've got in K2, and you can see it's given us a couple more options inside here. So one of the things that I'm going to do over here is switch on the anonymous access capability. So I'm going to save that. And what I'm going to do as well is when you hit the save button, at the moment it's kind of trying to take you back to SharePoint. What I'm going to do here is override that. So I'm going to go to the rule that when the button is saved, you can see it's automatically written up some rules based upon where I've come from. And I'm just going to disable this sort of ability to us to go to SharePoint. Actually, I could probably, it's going to create the item. And then what I'll do over here is maybe just show a message to the user. Show a message. I'll put that at the end of our little form over here. And say completed, thanks. Your order is on the way. Something like that. What's quite nice is that even from here, I could also call other smart objects. So as an example, what I'm also going to do is I'm going to go and call another smart object. So from our form, I can interact with these smart objects directly as well. So I'm going to execute a smart object. I've got another smart object in my environment. Under my common over here, I put it into tools. And I've got a little smart object that's able to interact with text messages. So let's send out a text message as well. I'm going to configure that. So the mobile, well, let's go to the form, the new drinks order form that's filled in. Let's go to its controls. There's a little mobile text box over here. Let's put that in, and I'll say in the message, let's go and get the actual drink choice. I'll say here is on the way. So just as a little extra little bit that's going to be sent through to you. I think that's probably okay for now. So let's go and save that. Okay, so finish. Let me check that in. And now when I right click on it and I click on run, what you'll see is now I've got this form sitting outside of SharePoint with the same information that we completed a little bit earlier, with the little drop downs taking place, and we can now interact with this form. So I'm going to go a little bit on the cuff here. I'm going to go and take this form, and I'm going to allow you guys, if you've got any mobile devices or you know, on your workstation, or I encourage you to actually access it using a mobile device and have a look at what this form looks like on your mobile device. So if you go and type in this little URL on your mobile device, you'll be able to access that. Or what I'll do to make it also a little bit easier for those that are on the conference call is I'm going to go and add this into the chat window. So you should be able to access that. So I probably should do a little bit more validation on that form before giving you access to, you know, checking a few little details. But I'm just going to go on the cuff now and just let you go and access that. So let me also open up my little reflector, if it's indeed running. It's one of those little applications that almost just work. So AirPlay. Hopefully it comes through. There we go. All right, so let's get that little URL back again. So I'm going to send it to 004. So what I'm doing here is I'm just sending sending myself a text message with access to that URL link. So there it is there. So I'm going to access it. So what you'll notice is now we've just accessed that little form. You'll notice also, if you think about the way that it looks, you'll notice that it's put the little details underneath each other. It's laid out the form slightly differently based upon the fact that we are accessing this on a mobile device. So if you want to access that, maybe you go and fill in some details over here, and you'll see where that information is going to end up being stored after that. So I'll just put in a little basic one here, Peter Piper. I didn't make email compulsory. 0488 18 0044 is my mobile number. So let's put in a little drink. So I'll have a beer. It's been a long day. I think I need one. A Corona, and I'll hit save. There we go. So that's my message that's come through there telling me about my drinks order. And there's my little text message coming back there telling me about my Coronas on the way. So I need to go and obviously deliver that to my user. So if I go into Office 365 again, so if I go to my drink orders and give that a refresh, there we go. We've got quite a few people filling in a couple of those forms. So you can see there are some of the details that you know, those that have participated have filled in. And that's quite a nice little example also of, you know, being able to take you know, information, for example, in Office 365 and being able to expose that to the outside world. I mean, I could even get slightly more creative with this and be able to take further data and be able to expose it. So one of the other things I thought I'd do just on the cuff, just see if I can get away with it, is I'm going to check out this external form, just the external one. Well, actually, let's do it to the view. Let me check that back in again. So the new view that we're busy using, I'm going to check that out. Go and edit that. So my save button at the moment is going to save that data that's been captured into Office 365, and we've seen that take place now. But what I can do is I can actually go to my little save button. You can see it's going to go and create the list item in SharePoint. But what I'm going to do here is actually go and extend that a little bit further. I'm going to tell it to call another smart object. And in this case, I'm going to go down to my my line of business systems over here. So you can see that I've got my SAP. So I've got some SAP smart objects. I've also got some CRM ones. In this case, I'm going to go to my CRM system, go to my CRM contact summary smart object. I'm going to call that one. I'm going to call its create method. and I'm going to go and configure that. So now this is the basic information that I need to populate CRM. So again, I wonder if my little auto map will fill in some of these. No. So let's use the last name text box and populate that information there. I'll just populate the email into the email over here. And first name, and let's grab the first name over here. I'll just do those basic details for now. I mean, I could fill in a couple of the others as well. All right, so, and maybe for description, I'll just put event demo over here for now. All right, so that can actually return me back the contact ID out of CRM. I'm not really too bothered with it for now, so I'm just going to leave that as it is. All right, so I'm going to finish that, and I'm going to go and check that back in again. All right, so I've just modified that view. So if I go back to my external drink orders now, all right, let's refresh my page. Refreshing the page gets the latest version of it. And now if I fill in a new one, so what I'll do is my time on my machine here is 341. So I'm going to create a user called 341 Dalmi. So I remember to delete him, and I'll put here, I'll use my first name, Igor. Igor at k2.com again. So a couple of the details. Let's just choose this time I'll have a water, still water, and I'm going to go and save this particular one off. So once again, I've saved that one off. This time, if you remember, I filled that on my, I didn't fill that on my device. You can see my text message is coming through. So still water's on the way. So again, if I go into Office 365 again, give that a refresh. Oh, there's even more coming through at the moment. So there's my 341 Delmi that I just put in now. Now if I go into my into this environment, go into my Office, my Dynamic CRM environment. I'm just going to give that a quick refresh. Right, and then inside of here, there we go. There's a 341 Dalmi Igor at k2.com, and probably a couple of the other guys that have filled in, sitting inside of my CRM contact environment as well. And that's my on-premise CRM system. So very quickly, we think about marketing. The marketing department wanted us to create a quick little form that we can expose out onto the internet to get people to register for an event, or maybe a new product, and we're looking for feedback on this new product and seeing what people options they are filling in. They're filling in these details. Some of that information is being written, or all of that information at the moment is being written to Office 365 for maybe one particular use or collaboration or whatever they need to do around that. But then the sales team has also asked us, well, can we not have that information in Salesforce.com or inside of Dynamic CRM? And then very quickly, just a small change, and now that information and those leads are now being written into our CRM system at the same time. All having this form being exposed as an anonymous access form, so no one had to actually access it. I just made it, just a simple click of the button so that it's now anonymous access, yet you're interacting with that data. So hopefully that's giving you a little sense of what that's like. I've only got a few minutes left, so the last thing I wanted to do was just show you a little bit of some of the new stuff that's coming from K2. So if you have a look at this, this is the, this is the K2 Designer. What am I doing? This is the K2 Designer. That's the independent designer. So you can obviously go and build everything inside of K2 without obviously using CRM or, with SharePoint. And you can go and do things from scratch here as well. So with inside of this environment, I've actually got a little area here called my application forms. And what I've got is a little form here called social drinks. So it's very similar to the one that we built, that I built with you guys a little bit earlier. So if I go and edit that, you'll see it's very similar. Or what I could probably even do is open up the view, have a look at that sitting inside here. And over here is the same similar thing over here, is that I can connect up and get the sort of drink choices and the types and things like that. The only difference that I've done on this particular view is that when I connect it to those smart objects, I've specified to cache the data. All right, so I've given it some cache data, and you'll notice I've also got this cascading drop-down taking place inside here, but I'm also caching the data. So what this will do is this will actually cache that data for offline use. What you can do as well is obviously you don't want to cache the data for 10,000 records in your backend system. So you'll notice that I've got some rules here. So when the view is initialized, it populates those, it's going to go and populate that information with the cache data. So for example, the types of the type information, but I can configure it here. And inside here, I can add additional filters so that it doesn't go and bring all 10,000 records. Maybe only bring, for the information that I want to cache, only bring the drinks that are in a particular category, or maybe if I'm looking for users, go to my user system. It's got maybe my users in maybe my AD or so, and only bring back the people that are in the sales role as an example and cache those. So I'm not caching too much data. So you can be quite creative about how much information you do want to bring in cache, but obviously you do need to be careful with that as well. All right, so that's the first little thing that we've done there. So if I go to my little form now, that again is that little form. You can see also with the beer and the sort of choices coming down. But now let's go to my mobile device. The only difference that we've done on this particular form is that when I set it up under my advanced options over here, I set it as something called an application form, which means that this is a form that appears in my applications list on my little app for my iPhone, and I've also switched on offline availability mode. So let's go and have a look at that. So if I go to my K2 little, you can see it over there, the little K2 application, and open that up. Inside of the K2 app, I've got things where I can see any tasks, so I can see I've got a couple tasks that I've got to approve here. From within inside of this as well, I can go to my forms. You can see if I go into my forms, those are forms that I have that are available for me to kick off from my mobile device, from this application. Of course, you can do them through the web as well, the way that you were interacting with those drinks orders a few minutes ago. So you can see all three of them are currently active. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and switch onto offline mode, which is effectively like going into the plane mode or whatever it is, except I can still connect. And what you'll notice is that the HR travel request is grayed out, yet submitted defect and social drinks are both available for me. So that's because the submitted defect, maybe I was working in a mine, I need to go and, somewhere where there's not much internet access, I still want to be able to go and submit defects. So this is a little example of my little defect submission form. You can go and fill this little form in, and you'll notice I've got a list of accounts over here, and those are my accounts coming out of my CRM system. So that's one example of a little offline form. I can attach a photo, and I can submit that off. Let's go and have a look at the drinks order one. So let's open up the social drinks. So that's a little form loaded in offline mode. You'll notice the choices are blank, and now I can go inside here and say, well, I'm looking at beers, and there's the cascading drop-down still working in offline mode as well. And if I go and say soft drinks over here, there's some Coca-Colas and a bunch of other details sitting inside here as well. I can fill these particular details off as well. So I'll just say it's for Igor. Igor, if I can get my name right there, Igor at k2.com. Put in my mobile again. Okay, and I'm going to go and submit that off. So that I've just done in offline mode. What you'll notice now is if you look at my outbox, you can see that I've currently got one sitting inside of my outbox. I can go and have a look at that, and you can see I've got that social drink sitting currently in my outbox ready to be submitted off. So I'm just going to go back onto take it off offline mode, and there we go. You can see that little order has now gone off, and that's gone and submitted that particular form off to whatever process, whatever process it's got sitting behind of that. So our offline capability is new. It's just in tech preview at the moment, so we're not pushing it that hard at the moment, because at the moment it's only available on iOS devices. We are going to be rolling it out to other devices over the coming months. But you're welcome to contact us if you would like some other information about the offline forms capabilities. So what I'm going to do now is just wrap up, and then we can go and see if there's any questions that anyone's asked. Okay, and is there any, quite often the guys put some questions in the feedback over here, so no one's put any questions inside of here. Let's go and have a look at the end of the PowerPoint. And I've lost my PowerPoint, unfortunately, when I did the restart. So thanks a lot for attending this session. I think the only thing that is probably worth having a look at is understanding that you haven't seen everything that's a part of K2. You've really just had a look in this session around some of the forms capabilities. Based upon the poll that came through, I decided to focus a little bit on the SharePoint, that 82% of you were interested in the SharePoint capability. Just know that it's not only restricted to SharePoint, you can do everything else. You know, I could have, for example, generated those forms and information out of a SQL database or out of a